Chapter 13. A new morning, a new life. I woke in the morning. I felt in such an extraordinarily good mood that I just lay there thinking I'd better not budge for the time being, lest the good mood suddenly vanish. What kind of a night did I have anyway? And why did I get the impression in the morning that over the past night my whole body and consciousness were literally bathed in love? By the light of day, it became clear to me why I had felt neither too cold nor too hot during the night. I was lying immersed in dry grasses and flowers, which gave off a pleasant warmth and aroma. Readers often ask how Anastasia keeps from freezing in the winter time during the cruel Siberian frosts, but it's really all so simple. If you bury yourself in a haystack, there are no frosts to fear. Granted, she has some kind of alternative source of warmth, given that she can walk about semi-nude even when it's +5 out and doesn't get cold. She even goes swimming then and doesn't give so much as a shiver when she comes out of the water. I continued to lie there in the bliss of my dried grasses and thought about how the morning breaking meant a new day had come, and I got the impression as though a new life were beginning. I thought, if only this were the way it could be every morning. Then in one lifetime, one could live 1,000 ages, as it were, and each age would be as magnificent as this morning. But how does one make each new day turn out as magnificent as this morning? I didn't get up until I heard Anastasia's cheerful voice calling out to me, "God surely gives to him who rises early." I crawled out of my splendid nighttime lodgings. Anastasia was already standing right up there at the entrance. Her golden hair was woven into a braid which was tied with grasses at the end like a bow. Her new hairdo looked very nice on her. "Let's go to the lake. You can wash yourself and get dressed," Anastasia proposed, tossing her braid coquettishly to the front. "Well now, women are women after all," I said to her aloud. "That's a very pretty braid you have, Anastasia." "Pretty, eh? Very, very pretty," she laughed as she twirled around. We ran to the lake. There on the shore, over some branches, were hanging my shirt, trousers, undershirt, in sum, everything I had taken off the night before. I felt them and they were already dry. "How did you manage to dry them so quickly?" "I gave them some help," Anastasia replied. "I put them on myself and ran about a little wearing your clothes, and they dried out very quickly. Now you will be able to put them on after your dip in the lake." "And are you going to be taking a dip too?" "I've already done everything I need to greet the day." Before I went into the water, Anastasia rubbed my body down with some sort of paste made from grass. And when I plunged in, the water all around me began to sizzle and my body smarted a little. But when I came out, I felt really refreshed, as though the pores of my skin were starting to breathe with great intensity all by themselves, each one taking in air individually. My overall breathing was free and easy. Just as she had done the night before, Anastasia, ever cheerful and playful, began once more to rub the moisture off my body with her hands. As she was rubbing my back, I suddenly felt something hot unexpectedly spurt down my spine. It happened once, then again I turned about sharply, and there she was, squeezing her breast with both hands, aiming a stream of warm breast milk right into my face. Then from the other breast a stream of milk spurted onto my chest, and then she let loose with a fast rub up and down on my body, accompanied by a roar of laughter. "What are you doing that for?" I asked when I had recovered from my surprise. Because, guffawed Anastasia as she handed me my shirt and trousers. They too did not smell the way they did before, and I noticed this as soon as I put them on. Then I said to Anastasia in a serious tone, "Okay, I've done everything as you wished. Now let me see our son." "Fine, we shall go. Only please, Vladimir, do not try to approach him right off. Watch him for a while at first. Try to understand him." "Fine, I'll watch, okay, and I'll understand." We went back to the glade, which was now so familiar to me. When we reached the bushes at the edge of the glade, Anastasia said, "Let us sit here quietly and watch. He will be waking up now, and you will see him." Beside a tree at the edge of the glade, the bear was lying on her side, but I couldn't see any baby. I was getting more and more excited and my heart started beating strangely. "Where is he?" I asked Anastasia with bated breath. "Look more closely," she replied. "Look, you can see his little head and feet sticking out from under the bear's paw. That is where he sleeps, in her groin. It's soft and warm there, and she keeps her paw on top of him, not pressing down, but just to provide a little covering." And I saw the scene. The bear's tiny body was resting in a cradle of thick bear fur in the huge beast's groin under her slightly raised front paw. The bear was lying on her side without stirring, turning only her head from side to side as she looked around. The wee little legs wiggled in the thick fur, at which point the bear raised her paw a little more. The baby was waking up. When he moved his arm, the bear raised her paw. When his arm dropped back to his side, she lowered her paw a little. Only her paw and head moved. There was not a stir from the rest of her body. "How can she lie like that without stirring? Isn't it uncomfortable to maintain that one position the whole time?" I asked. "She can lie like that without stirring for a long, long time, and it's not hard for her at all. She is just so thrilled when he crawls into his little bed. And now she has started to take herself very seriously. She has a sense of responsibility. When the time approached to start a family, she did not even let her intended mate come near her. That is not too good, but when our son grows a little, she will allow her mate to approach her again." As I listened to Anastasia, I couldn't take my eyes off my son. I watched as the little feet once again wiggled beneath the bear's huge paw. Then the paw went up in the air. The baby moved his arms and legs, stretched himself, raised his head, and then all at once stopped moving. "Why did he stop moving? Is he going back to sleep?" I asked Anastasia. "Look more closely. He's going piddle." The bear did not manage to let him down to the ground on time, or perhaps she did not want to. She really spoils him, you know. The little fountain kept trickling onto the bear's fur. Like the boy, she too had stopped moving, even her head and her paw, until the fountain had ceased its trickle. Then the bear began to turn over onto her other side, and the baby slid down to the ground. "All right, you see, she thinks he will go on to do his number 2, our little man," Anastasia said cheerfully. The tiny human body lay on the grass, tensing its abdomen muscles in preparation for his number 2. While above it hovered the enormous bear. It seemed as though the bear was helping the baby along with her rumbling sounds, as if going through a simpler preparation herself. The boy turned over on his stomach, started moving his arms and crawling across the grass on all fours. His little bottom had got dirty from his pooping. The bear went over to him and lapped his tiny bottom with her enormous tongue, wiping off the poop, just like a nanny. She gave the boy a push with her tongue, and he plopped on his tummy, but got up again on all fours and went on crawling. The bear followed him and gave his bum still another lapping, even though it was already clean by now. "What do you think, Vladimir? Do you think she would be able to take off his dirty diapers or underpants and put new ones on?" Anastasia said quietly. Okay, I responded also in a whisper. "I get it." The boy turned over onto his back. And then the bear persisted in lapping his thighs. And when the bear persisted in lapping his thighs, he made a nimble move, and his little hand latched onto the fur on the bear's muzzle. In response to what looked to be insignificant movements by the boy's hand, the bear proceeded to rest her huge head on the ground at his feet. He grabbed hold of her muzzle, reached up with his other hand, and started climbing up the bear's head. "Where on earth is he going?" I queried. "To the bear's eyes," responded Anastasia. "Her eyes sparkle. They fascinate him, and he always wants to touch them." The boy lay on his tummy at the bear's muzzle and looked at one of her eyes. He then tried touching it with his finger, but all at once her eye snapped shut. The boy's finger poked at her eyelid. After waiting a little while longer and still not seeing any sparkling eye, The boy began climbing down from the bear's muzzle, then crawled a little way across the grass and stopped to look at something on the ground. The bear got up and roared twice. She's calling the wolf. She needs to clean herself up and have something to eat. Now you will see how they have a friendly conversation amongst themselves, Anastasia commented. A few moments later, the she-wolf appeared at the edge of the glade. The bear did not show any signs of welcoming her presence, but greeted her with a threatening roar. The wolf's own behaviour was far from friendly. She surveyed the whole glade. She pranced a bit around the edge, lay down, then took a big leap and lay down again as though ready to pounce. "What kind of friendly conversation do you call that?" I asked. "Why did the bear call her and then roar at her like that? And the wolf seems pretty threatening herself." "That is the way they talk with each other." The bear stopped the wolf with her roar to make sure everything was in order with her, to check that she was not sick with anything, that it was not dangerous to let her approach a child of man, that she was strong enough to defend him. The wolf showed that she was completely prepared. She showed it by her actions, not with words. You saw how she walked past and jumped pretty high. Indeed, the bear, after observing the wolf, calmly shuffled off out of the glade. The wolf lay down on the grass not far from the little one. The baby kept staring at something for a while longer, feeling the grass. Then he noticed the wolf and crawled toward her. As he approached, he began feeling her muzzle with his hands, stroking her teeth with his finger, patting her tongue. The wolf lapped his face, at which point little Vladimir crawled onto her stomach, felt the wolf's nipples, sucked his hand all over and screwed his face into a frown. "Time for our son to eat," Anastasia began speaking again. "But he is not yet so hungry that he will drink the wolf's milk. I am going to leave you for a little bit while you sit here at the edge of the glade. If he sees you and is interested, he will crawl over to you. Only do not pick him up yourself. He is already a man. Even if small in appearance, he will not understand meaningless cooing sounds. Besides, violence may result if you try to pick him up against his will. He will not understand that, even if you do it with good intentions. But without his permission, you will make a bad impression on him." "Right," I said. "I shall not try to pick him up. I'll just sit here like this. And the wolf, she won't touch me? With the scent you have now, she will not touch you." Anastasia clapped her thigh twice. The wolf got up, turning her head in Anastasia's direction. Then, after a glance at the baby, who had started playing again with some kind of bug, she ran over to Anastasia. Anastasia came up very near to me. She summoned the wolf to approach closer, then gestured to her to lie down. "Can I stroke her, to finally make friends with her?" I suggested. "She will not appreciate any condescending familiarity on your part. She understands everything and will not touch you, but she will not tolerate any display of superiority," Anastasia replied. She sent the wolf back out into the glade and ran off to tend to some affairs of her own, promising to return shortly. I emerged from behind the bushes where Anastasia and I had hid ourselves to observe the scene taking place in the glade. I came out and sat down on the grass about 10 metres from little Vladimir. I sat there that way for about 15 minutes. He didn't pay the slightest attention to me. I thought that as long as I continued sitting quietly, he would never pay any attention to me. And so I gave a couple of clicks with my tongue. The little one turned his head and looked at me. My son, my very own son, had his eyes fixed on me with fascination, and I was excitedly looking at him. I could even feel a flush all through my body from the excitement. I had the urge to run and take his little body into my arms, squeeze him and press him against my chest. But Anastasia's request, and more significantly the presence of the wolf, held me back. And then my little son began slowly crawling toward me. He kept his eyes fixed on me all the while he was crawling. My heartbeat started beating so loud in my chest that I could hear it. What was it beating like that for? Maybe it would frighten the little one away, it was pounding so. But he kept crawling and crawling, and again something in the grass caught his eye, and he began poking around after a little bug. Then he began to examine something crawling along his arm. At this point he was 3 meters away. My little son had stopped short in his crawling, only 3 meters away from me. All over some bug. And what kind of world was out there in the grass? What kind of life had taken his fancy so? What kind of order or rules do they have in the forest anyway? Here's this little boy with his very own father right in front of him, and he's more interested in some kind of bug. That's not the way it should be. The child should know that his father is more important than a bug. All at once, the little one looked up again in my direction, showed me a toothless smile, and quickly started crawling again more nimbly than before. I was all prepared to pick him up, but then noticed that he kept on crawling right past me, not paying any attention to me. I looked around and saw Anastasia standing all smiles behind me, a little to one side. She sat down and put her hand on the ground, palm upturned. The boy smiled and climbed up to his mother's breast. Anastasia didn't pick him up, but ever so gently helped him climb up, ever so gently helped him reach her breast. Now he was already in her arms, clapping his tiny hands against the exposed breast and smiling at Anastasia. Then, after feeling and stroking her nipple, he closed his lips tight about it and began sucking on the supple breast. Anastasia, in the meantime, just gave one look at me, putting her finger to her lips to let me know I should keep quiet. I sat there the whole time without uttering a word while she fed our son. It seemed as though all during the feeding Anastasia was totally oblivious to my presence. Indeed, she did not seem to be aware of the world around her at all. The whole time she concentrated her gaze on our son, and it also seemed as though they were somehow communicating with each other. This impression came from the fact that after sucking for quite a while, the baby would suddenly stop, turn away from the nipple and look into Anastasia's face. Sometimes he would be smiling, at other times his face had a serious expression. Then he became very still and slept for a while in his mother's arms. When he awoke, his face once again broke into a smile, and Anastasia sat him on the palms of her hand, supporting his back. Their faces were very close together, and the baby would feel Anastasia's face with his hands and press his cheek against hers. Then he spied me once again, and once more he fell still for a while, staring at me in fascination. All at once he reached out his little hand toward me, inched his body forward in my direction, and uttered the sound, "Eh!" Involuntarily, I reached out my hands to him, and at that point, Anastasia handed me over to him. Here I was, holding in my arms the tiny body of my very own son, the son I had so greatly desired. Everything else in the world vanished into oblivion, and I had the strong urge to do something for him. The baby felt my face, pressed his lips against it. Then he recoiled with a frown, apparently feeling the prickles on my unshaven face. After that, I don't know how it happened, but I got an uncontrollable urge to kiss his warm little cheek, and I resolved to kiss him, but instead of a kiss, I somehow ended up giving his cheek 2 quick laps the way the wolf did. The boy recoiled from me and began batting his eyelids in amazement. Anastasia's loud trills of laughter filled the glade. The baby at once reached out his little hands toward her and started laughing too, squirming in my arms. I realized he was asking to be released. My son was leaving me. Obedient to his will and the established rules of communication here, I carefully put him down on the grass. He immediately crawled over to Anastasia. She jumped up with a laugh, ran around me and sat on the other side of me, very close, whereupon the little one turned around and with a big smile crawled over to the 2 of us. He climbed into Anastasia's arms and once more began to feel my face. This is how I first communicated with my son. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14. A father's role. My son, my little Vladimir, finally fell asleep. After his feeding, he played for a while with something in the grass. He felt a cedar cone which had fallen to the ground and tried to lap it. He looked up at the clouds floating by in the sky. He listened to the birds sing, then climbed up a little hill where the grass was thicker, curled up, closed his eyes, smiled at something and fell asleep. Anastasia ran off to take care of some sort of tasks of her own. I set out for a walk in the forest alone, immersing myself in thought to the exclusion of everything around me. At the same time, I couldn't get rid of the alternating feelings of joy and disappointment. I sat down under a cedar tree at the edge of the lake and decided to just sit there without moving until I thought of some way that I, as a parent, could contribute to my child's upbringing. I had to think of something to make him feel his father was the most important thing in his life. When Anastasia approached, I didn't feel like talking with her at first. It was her laughter, in fact, that had distracted my son from me. Anastasia sat quietly by my side, her hands clutching her knees, thoughtfully contemplating the calm waters of the lake. She was the first to speak. "Please do not be offended at me. Your communication struck me as so funny, I could not restrain myself. That's not what I'm bothered about." "What is it then?" "Many readers' letters ask about how to bring up children. They want me to ask you everything about your system of raising children and to describe it in my next book. But what is there to describe? There is no system, quite the opposite. What you have here is some kind of anti-system. For example, what should fathers do under such circumstances, a reader might ask. You used a most appropriate word, anti-system. You can describe that. But who would be interested in that? People are looking for practical guides where it tells them what they should do with their baby when he's, say, 1 month old and when he's 2 months old and so on. An hourly schedule, books that offer a dietary program, a complete timetable for bringing up the child according to his age. But here you have only a complete indulgence of the child's whims, an all-permissive attitude. Tell me, Vladimir, what do you want our son to be like when he grows up?" "What do you mean, what do I want him to be like?" "Of course I want him to be happy, normal and successful individual." "And are there many happy people amongst your acquaintances?" "Happy? Well, if you're talking about completely happy people, I'd have to say probably not very many. Everybody's got something not quite right with their lives. Either there's not enough money, or they're plagued by illness or family squabbles. But I want my son to avoid any kind of unpleasant experiences." "Then think about it. How can he avoid them if you deliberately squeeze him into the system everyone is brought up in? And think, might there be a certain pattern in the fact that all parents want to see their children happy, and yet they grow up and turn out just like everyone else, not very happy?" "Pattern?" I queried. "What kind of pattern? If you know, tell me yourself." Let us ponder this question together. This is something people have been thinking about for ages, Anastasia. All kinds of scholars and specialists are pondering it. For this, they have invented all sorts of systems for child rearing, worked out schedules, trying to find the most efficient system. Take a more careful look around you, Vladimir. See the trees, grasses and flowers growing. How could one possibly draw up an advanced schedule of the days and hours when they should be watered? You would not go watering flowers when they were being washed with water from heaven simply because someone worked out a detailed schedule for watering them. Now you're going too far. That's just nonsense. That's not an example for raising children. It's not something that can happen in life. But you know, Vladimir, this is exactly what does happen in life. No matter what the system, it is still only a system. It is always calculated to wean the heart and soul away from man when he is still small and to subject him to the system, so that he grows up like everyone else in a way that will fit the system. And so it goes on for ages on end, so as to prevent the human soul from experiencing clarity of vision, to prevent man from discovering himself in his beauty as a whole, with a God-given soul. Yes, man, the ruler of all the universe. Hold on a moment. Don't get carried away beyond my reach. Speak calmly using everyday speech. What do parents need to do to make it so? so that children will grow up, as you say, with a soul that is free, to be rulers of the universe and happy, as God himself has wished. They must not interfere. They need to see their children clearly in their own thinking, the way God himself has wished. It is the aspiration of all the forces of light in the universe that each newborn child can be endowed with the very best of creation. It is the parent's duty not to hide the creative light under the erudition of invented dogmas. For ages upon the earth, debates have arisen as to which system might be the wisest. But think about it yourself, Vladimir. Debates arise where truth is hid from sight. Fruitless can go on forevermore as to what might be found behind the closed door. But one has only to open the door and it will be clear to all. And there will be nothing to debate, since everyone will be able to see the truth for himself. But in the final analysis, who will open this door? It is already open. All that remains is for the eyes of the soul to be opened to see and gain awareness. Gain awareness of what? You were asking me about systems. You were mentioning the schedules and everyday regimes and how someone sets them forth for people in books. But think about it. Who can tell more clearly about creation than the Creator himself? But the Creator doesn't tell anything. Up to now he has said hardly a word. Nobody hears his words. Words thought up by man have no meanings. The Creator patiently and lovingly speaks to each one of us through splendid, imperishable acts. The rising of the sun and the silvery sheen of the moon, the soft mist and tender dew, playing with the sun's rays and drinking in the heavenly blue. The universe is filled with so many clear examples like that. Just look around you. They touch you and everyone else too. Again, if everything Anastasia said about child rearing were to be laid out, the result would probably be the complete opposite of how we handle this matter today. I've already said that Anastasia, along with all her forebears through the ages, treats a newborn as a deity or an immaculate angel. They consider it totally unacceptable to interfere with the child's thought process. Anastasia's grandfather and great-grandfather were able to observe for long periods at a time how their little granddaughter would be fascinated by a bug or a flower or the contemplation of something. They tried their best not to distract her with their presence. They would converse with her only when she herself paid attention to them and showed a desire to communicate. Anastasia maintained that at the very moment I was observing little Vladimir contemplating something in the grass, he was becoming aware not only of the bugs but of all creation. According to her, a bug is a more perfect mechanism than any manufactured product, let alone a primitive construction set. A child provided with the opportunity to communicate with these perfect beings will himself become more perfect than through communication with primitive lifeless objects. Besides, as she maintains, every blade of grass, every bug, is interrelated with the whole of creation and subsequently aids the child in becoming aware of the essence of the universe and of himself as part of it, to become aware of this his innate purpose. Artificially created objects have no such connection and do not arrange priorities and values in the child's brain in the right way. To my observation that the conditions in which she, and now our son, were being brought up were totally different from those in which children in our civilized world are to be raised, she responded as follows. Even in the mother's womb, and especially when a helpless infant, as it seems, is given birth in the world, the forces of light in the universe rejoice. They rejoice in the trembling hope that the newly arrived immaculate godlike man will become their kind ruler and intensify the light of love from the earth. Everything has already been provided for him by the Creator. Through a bug, a tree, a blade of grass, a seemingly ferocious beast, the universe is prepared to be a good nurse for him. Even in a man outwardly small, we see the great work of the Creator of all. In a burst of bright inspiration, man has been co-created by the Creator, and with his birth has been created for him a paradise on earth. Nothing and no one has power over the Creator's supreme creation. His burst of love and bright inspiration are already comprehended in each engendered moment for the world. Of all the beings in the unfathomable universe, only one is capable of influencing his destiny by coming between God, paradise, a star of happiness, and man. So, I queried, what does that mean? Does that mean that there is a being in the world more powerful than God? There is nothing in the world more powerful than divine inspiration, replied Anastasia, but there is a being equal to it in power, capable of coming between God, the most tender educator, and the angelic child, man. And who is that? How is he called? That being is man the parent. What? But how can it happen that parents can wish unhappiness for their children? Everyone wants happiness, but they have forgotten the path to happiness. That is why they are perpetuating violence out of good intentions. Can you offer proof, even just a little, of what you say? I asked. You spoke of various systems of raising children, Anastasia responded. Think about it. There are many systems, but there is only one truth, and this alone means that the many are leading in the wrong direction. How can one tell the true system from a false one? Try to look at life with an open heart. Purify thought from vain and fruitless art, and then you will see the world, the creator of the universe, and yourself. Where are the eyes of the heart, in place of ordinary eyes? Who is capable of discerning all this? Couldn't you talk about things in more specific terms, and in simpler conversational phrases? You said that your language would be similar to mine, but you are talking differently, and you are making me talk like you. I can sense how you're talking differently, only a wee bit differently, and you will be able to remember the gist of what I say, and my speech will mix with yours. And do not worry, do not feel shy about the combinations of words you use. Your language will be understandable to many people. It will reveal to many hearts the essence concealed in those very hearts. Let the poetry of the universe express itself in the way you write. What's going on here? I don't want anyone to change the way I write. But yet you were offended when a journalist called your language stilted. I, along with your readers, can make it so your language may leap from stilted into the best sounding of all time. Well, okay, let's have it that way down the road, but for now I just want to hear simple language. As it is, the issue is so complex. It is incomprehensible. How does it all happen? And how come parents are closing off the path to happiness for their children? And is that in fact what is really happening? First of all, I have to be convinced that that's really the case. Fine, if you want to be convinced, try recalling scenes from your own childhood. But that's hard to do. Not everyone can recall things that happened in their infancy. And why might that be? Is it not because memory attempts to spare your feelings and excise what is empty and fruitless? It tries to erase any suggestion of hopelessness, to rub out what you experienced in your mother's womb when you sensed the world's verbal abuse through the sufferings of your mother. Do you want me to help you recall the other things? Well, you can give it a try. What other things were there that have gone from our memory? The other things are not things you wish to remember. You're reluctant to remember how you, the ruler of the universe, lay all by yourself, helpless in your crib. You were so tightly wrapped up it was like being bound in a cocoon, and smiling people decided when you should eat and when you should sleep. You wanted to think everything through for yourself and make sense of what was going on. But so often they would simply make cooing sounds and toss you up toward the ceiling. But what for? You never got a chance to think about that. After growing a little, you began to see a great many things around you that had no voice and no heart, but you were not allowed to touch them. You could touch only those things which people handed you, and you resigned yourself to trying to figure out. Where was the perfection in any of the joy toys you were offered? But there was no way you could have found in this absurd primitive object what had never been there in the first place and never could. But still you kept searching. You did not completely give up. You felt things with your hands, you tried to bite them, but to no avail. You did not find any explanation. That was when you first wavered. You who were born to be ruler of the universe, you decided you were unable to decide anything for yourself. You were betrayed by those who gave you birth, and you betrayed yourself. You talk about the events of my life. Was there anything in which I was different from other kids? I am talking specifically about you, and about those who are listening to me at the moment. So that must mean there are many rulers of the universe. If each one of us is born to be one, but how can that be? What sense does it make being a ruler if there are many ruling over the same thing? Or does that mean there are many universes? There is one universe, just one, indivisible. But in that one universe, each one has his own space and is responsible for the whole. Each one is responsible. So where is it? My space, I mean. It has been lost, but you will find it. When did I manage to lose it? When you gave up. What do you mean I gave up? I was just like all the other kids. Like all the other children, you believed in the kindness of people around you. You believed in your parents. You began more and more to repress your own desires. And you accepted their belief that you were nothing but an ignorant, insignificant youngster. And the sensations inculcated in you by the abuse of your childhood kept on haunting you throughout your life, even to the point of attempting to reproduce themselves in your offspring. You went to school like everyone else. Here you were told how man was nothing but a monkey, how he was a primitive creature, how foolish he was to believe in God. You were told about how there was just one leader who knew everything, a leader chosen by the people. A leader who alone was more worthy and more intelligent than anyone else. And you got carried away with poems about that leader. You began glorifying him without a second thought. It wasn't just that I extolled and read verse, as I was told. I actually believed it back then. Yes, many people read verse. There are even competitions to see who could extol him better than anyone else. And you tried to be the best. So did everyone back then. Yes, the whole system demanded that everyone have the same aspirations and thereby perpetrated violence on everyone. It tried to break people to preserve itself. But then, all at once, part way through your life, you discovered that there were a lot of systems out there that they were all different. Then you discovered that man, quite possibly, was never a monkey, and the very wise leader turned out to be a very stupid tyrant. And it turned out that your generation has been living life all wrong. Now there was a new system to live by. And then you became a parent, and unthinkingly you handed over your daughter to the new system, as though you were doing her a favour. You were not thinking as you did before. You used to wonder when your toys made noise, but you don't wonder anymore. Having accepted abuse yourself as a normal state of affairs, you began abusing your own child. Century after century, various systems have come and gone, one after the other, but all with a single goal: to kill you, a ruler and wise creator, and kill you, a ruler and wise creator, and transform you into a soulless slave. The system always operates through parents, and through those who proclaim themselves to be wise teachers. They will come up with new teachings, thereby engendering a whole new system. And it does not take much investigation to see clearly that they are motivated by the age-old ambition to separate you from God, to come between you and make both you and God try to live and work only for them. This is the core of any system, and you, Vladimir, started asking me to create yet another system. I shall not be able to fulfill your request. You must look around you. Try to make sense of things through your heart alone. Tell me, Anastasia, what about our sun? Do you mean to say that living out here in the dense taiga among all the wild beasts, he has not known violence, even in the least? He knows neither violence nor fear. He is ever more confident that everything here is subject to man and that man is answerable for everything. But wasn't it violence, at least in a small degree, when the bear lapped his dirty bottom after he woke up? When he fell on his stomach after the bear lapped him? And she did this a second time after he began crawling again. And the second time he fell down, the way I saw it, he really didn't like the bear lapping him like that. That was why he grabbed the bear by the muzzle, so he would stop pushing him with a tongue. And right at that point, the bear stopped lapping him. A little later, he would realise the significance of this procedure, but right now, he sees it as a game. He himself plays with the bear and wants her to chase him. You say man is the wisest creature in the universe, Anastasia, but here our son is being raised by wild animals. That's not quite normal. I saw one time on TV how they showed a person who was already grown up. As a young lad, he had landed among wolves, and when he was grown up, people caught him. And it was a long time before he could talk anything like a human being. He seemed quite backward mentally. As far as our son is concerned, Anastasia replied, all the wild animals around do not serve as child raisers, but rather as good, kind, capable nannies who sincerely love our little boy. And there is no doubt they would be ready at any moment to give their lives for their little fellow. Have you been giving them this kind of training for a long time? Did your grandfather and great-grandfather help you? What need is there for training? Everything was done ages ago by their creator. But how could he have foreseen everything in advance to be able to teach each creature what to do in any given instance? Back there in the glade, as I was watching our son was looking at the squirrels, and one in particular caught his fancy. He held out his little hand to it, smiled, and uttered a drawn-out "Hey!" and the squirrel dashed right over to him. That same squirrel that had caught his eye. The little one then played with it, took it by its paw, and stroked its tail. Now, how could the creator have foreseen this particular situation and taught the squirrel what to do? The creator is wise. He made everything more simple and to perfection. How? From a man who is free from aggression, selfishness, fear, and many other dark feelings which came along later, emanates the light of love. Even though it is invisible to the eye, it is stronger than the light of the sun. Its energy is life-giving. The way the Creator arranged things, only man is endowed with such a tremendous ability. Only man. He alone is capable of bringing warmth to all living creatures. That is why all living creatures are drawn to him. As Vladimir, our little son, was paying attention to the squirrels, he fixed his gaze on one of them in particular, concentrated his attention on it, and the warmth went out to that little squirrel. In this warmth, the creature felt a sense of grace and rushed toward the source, and was delighted to play with him. Our son can summon any animal that way. Thanks to the Creator, all newborns have such an ability. When they are still in the space of love, and nothing has yet erased this magnificent element within them. The space of love begins with the mother's womb, and then only spreads apace. Only man is endowed with the power to wreck or perfect this space. My grandfather did train the eagle, you remember that? And thereby introduced a new element into the space of love. That is what my forebears, my forefathers and foremothers, have been doing from time immemorial. Now, tomorrow will be a special day, and you will see what happens. Tomorrow will be an important day for the future. End of chapter 14.